More breaking news on MF Global. We just told you the SEC is now looking at whether there was insider trading involved in the MF Global bonds. I mean, think about this, Lisa. It's the story that just keeps morphing from one situation to another. And now, what? People are actually selling bonds ahead of this news, potentially. That's what they want to find out.
Right. And it may or may not have anything to do, of course, with the actual downgrade itself. But
correct.
In retrospect, now you leave no stone unturned. And someone who knows something about leaving no stone unturned is joining us right on the phone now. Philadelphia, he's a former federal prosecutor, Fred Tecce. He has spent decades prosecuting and now defending regulatory cases just like this one. Fred, great to have you on once again. What's your perspective on this? A surprise that the SEC is actually going to take a closer look at these trades?
No, not at all, Lisa, and thanks for having me. I mean, when you do an insider trading case, the first thing you want to look at is what was the situation, what was going on, and when was there sales, was there an uptick in sales, and so. Given what I've heard so far, and I think the best thing you've said is that this is an ever-morphing situation, I have no doubt that the SEC took one look at this and said, we need to look at this a lot more closely.
And Fred, they're looking at the bonds right now. There's still no discussion as to whether they're looking at the equities. But in your experience as a federal prosecutor, how much of the time have they gone after bond trading, insider trading, as opposed to equity insider trading?
Well, you know, interestingly, I mean, the shishi thing for years, Adam, was to go after the equity insider trading because those were the ones who were making the biggest splash. But, you know, all of a sudden you have MF Global come along and, you know, these guys are taking, you know, bizarre positions based upon European bonds. And so, you know, under the 33 and 34 Act, it's a security, whether it's a bond or it's a debt, no matter what type of security it is. The statute is broad enough to include it. And so, you know, in this economy and the way things have been going the last couple of years, this doesn't surprise me that this is now heading in this direction.
Fred, we just were talking to Lizzie O'Leary, who was covering everything that was happening out of the CFTC today. Explain a little bit of the difference between what the SEC does versus the CFTC, and which one is taking the closest look at MF Global at the moment.
Well, and I also think you need to add in another one that goes by the moniker FBI, because I understand that they're also involved. So let me back up for a minute. You know, the Securities and Exchange Commission, their job is to look and see whether or not there were violations of the Securities and Exchange Act, you know, the 33, the 34 Act, and other things that kind of stem from them, whether or not people were making trades based upon information that was not generally available to the public. And so, and what they call a material fact. So that's what the SEC does. These other organizations that you mentioned, such as the CFTC and the CME, those, you know, the CME is the exchange. They have their exchange rules that they're looking at to see whether or not those exchange rules were violated. Other organizations may be looking to see if there was, I'll use the term commingling, for lack of a better term, where there was client money used or whether or not MF money was used. So they all look at different things, but they ultimately stem from the same set of what we call operative facts. I mean, the facts are the facts. The violations will follow from those.
Hey, Fred, I got to ask you, how do you go about, if you're a prosecutor, how do you go about trying to prove that it's inside information? This could be tricky if they hadn't tapped phones, right?
Well, you know, it's interesting. You know, we saw that happen beginning with Gallium, where you know, everybody in Wall Street kind of looked around and said, wait a minute, that's for the mob. We're not the mob. We're not the mafia. What are you doing tapping our phones? But the fact of the matter is that in today's age, with the electronic information that's available, these cases have become a lot easier for the government to prosecute. We know when information was available. We know when things were done on people's cell phones, PDAs, smartphones, emails, and even if this stuff is erased or tried to be destroyed, you can still get it back from a forensic computer perspective. So the fact of the matter is that they're going to be able to look into this and start issuing subpoenas and grabbing computers and be able to connect the dots to show who knew what when.
All right, Fred, we got to leave it there. Do appreciate you joining us on the fly there.